Well, the nice thing about being the last person to speak, I agree with everything's been said before me, and particularly the statement coming from Carla about the 10 million to African risk capacity. So give a round of applause, Carla. Thank you. It is by just looking at the title of our topic, the two words that actually jump out, and that's partnership and integrated approaches. By looking at the panel members, I think we made the case about our partnership is important. And by looking at the contribution of all of us, we certainly understand it's not a one-size-fits-all. We have to pool our resources together so we can provide a holistic support to our member states. I want to make a 3-point guided by 3 words: leverage, governance, and priorities. Leverage in the sense all over the developing world, Africa included. There are institutions, including mine, that have been mandated by either the African Union to find what we call African solution to African problem. So my plea and my advice for the loss and damage structure to make sure we leverage on those institutions so we can actually expedite implementation. We've been doing it for 10 years and 15 years. Additional resources should certainly be channeled by looking at this institution. We've done it successfully so that we can save some time. And I have no doubt with the work we're doing with the European Union, that leverage will be the guiding factor in the way we actually implement additional resources. And this is a time for me to actually recognize and commend the European Union for the support not only they provide to my organization. I always say the European Union has been doing loss and damage before it becomes a very cool expression, and loss and damage because of the support that you provided to us, but to also all the African institutions that are doing everything possible to support Africa. It's also important to underscore the loss and damage is not about just losing infrastructures. It's about losing life and livelihood. There's a human face to loss and damage that doesn't get talked about quite often, but that should be guiding our intervention, because ultimately across Africa, lives are being lost, livelihood are being affected. So therefore, our intervention in the short run will save the life of many Africans, and that should be inspiring us and guiding our intervention in the way that we can demonstrate that we're actually being impactful and reducing the impact of climate change across Africa. Governance, I think my good friend has talked about it earlier. As much as we can celebrate getting billions of dollars, but if they don't actually are accessible, they're available and affordable to those who need them, it may be the headlines of the billions, but doesn't get to where it's needed. And I think we have example of existing fund whereby the governance were cumbersome to the extent that money was not actually getting to where it's needed. So we have so many examples where we can learn from to come out with some best practices whereby accessibility is such that African institutions can access these fundings. Now, obviously, I am not advocating a lack of due diligence and rigor and best practice in terms of due diligence. But certainly we can do both. We can be rigor in our due diligence, but at the same time come up with systems whereby accessibility is such we can get to where the money is needed. And that is important because if our objective is to save life and livelihood, accessibility has to be fast and shift and get it to where it's needed. Last point is priorities. If I have additional money, like we just got 10 million euro from the EU, where would you put the money and why? I think number one, Carly alluded to this, early warning system can save lives. It's not about technicalities. Just to give an example, if you look at tropical cyclone in Madagascar, the fact that you provide early warning system to the government 5 days before actually the cyclone hits allows policymakers to move people from harm's way so you can save life. In the case of Madagascar, we talked about 5,000 people. And also in case of flood across Africa, we've lost life that could have been saved if we provided early warning system to where it needed. So my first plea in terms of additional resources, how do we actually mainstream early warning system? How do we make sure government take risk profiling more seriously so they can use that information to make informed decisions? And that would be where I put a lot of money, because that's the starting point. I think second, Within many African governments, the capacities to deal with disasters management is not embedded in public policies. In other words, there is no contingency planning. To the extent that actually most of the disasters, when they happen, almost come as a surprise. And you see within government a lack of coordination, lack of reactiveness, proactiveness. I think the money should also go into building those capacities so the Africans can do it themselves, as opposed to relying to the international community to do so. Third, rapid response, it's important in saving lives. Now, insurance is obviously the best way to provide additional resources to helping government to deal with a kind of disaster, whether it's drought, tropical cyclone, or flood. And here, what we put on the table is extremely innovative to the extent most of these governments, when there is a disaster, they wait till it's actually too long to react. But through the insurance market, we're able to at least to pull the risk of this government, go to the insurance market together as a community, pay a premium, and that premium allows to basically get additional resources to respond rapidly so you can save lives. The challenge of that model is the affordability of premium. It's such that government may not be able to actually pay the premium because they have other priorities. Now, luckily, with our partners, able to provide subsidies where needed, so the government can basically be able to afford the premium. Now, the danger of subsidies, you don't want to depend on this endlessly. It may actually provide the impetus for government to see the benefit, with the hope that in the long run, government will actually pay their own premium out of their own government. And that's when you can claim success, that at least we're able to actually create the conditions for insurance to be part of the solutions. Let me also underscore, insurance is not the only answer. Social protection, solidarity fund, contingency funding. These are other instruments that you can deploy if insurance is not the answer to responding to disasters across Africa. So all these instruments could be leveraged and deployed where necessary so we can actually support the countries that need them. Last point I want to make, extremely important, which is important at ARC, and that is that before we even put together insurance, we have what we call an operational plan, whereby when the money is available to the insurance, we know exactly where the money will go to and how do we protect the people. And that is important, combined with the monitoring and evaluation, so you can actually keep track of the impact you're having on the ground, so you can claim, because of our intervention, we protected the lives of many Africans across the continent. So I think the key word I want to leave there is the following. Disasters management has a human face. Let's be inspired by that. Innovation is important. It can't be business as usual. And then last but not least, unless we empower the African institution to do it themselves, we're not going to build actually a sustainable solution so that we can get to what we say at the African Union, African solution to African problems. But ultimately, the global climate crisis calls for global solidarity, and I'm glad we have all the actors here to make sure we make it a reality so that no one is left behind. Thank you.
Thank you very much.